welcome back to question 13. Okay, find the midpoint of AF if A is at the origin and F is at 9, 6. Okay, find the midpoint. That's the ask of the question. Get the midpoint for line segment AF. Now, if we're looking for midpoint, we're looking at the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula says, take the two x values, x1 plus x2, add them together, and then divide by 2. Let me fix this. So this should be a 2. Okay. And then for the y values, do the same thing. Add them together, y1 plus y2, divide them by 2. And that's it. So the question tells you A is at the origin. That may not seem like it's a point, but it is. The origin is at 0, 0. So they're giving you the x and y value for the first point. And then F is at 9, 6. Let's go ahead and call A x1, y1, and then F will be x2, y2. Okay, so let's go ahead, plug it into our formula, and get our answer. x1 is at 0 plus x2 is at 9 over 2. y1 is at 0 plus y2, which is at 6 over 2. Now the midpoint. Let's go ahead and solve. 0 plus 9 is 9 over 2. 0 plus 6 is 6 over 2. Let's simplify. Nine divided by 2 is 4.5, or 4.5. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now I have a graph here because what I want to do is I want to check, does my answer make sense? For everything in this unit, you can check if your answer makes sense. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's plot AF and let's see if it looks like our midpoint is pretty accurate. So remember, A is at 0, 0. So I'm going to put a point at 0, 0. And then F was at 9, 6. I believe it was 9, 6. Yep, 9, 6. Okay, so we're going to connect. Remember, my connection is going to be a little bit off. It's a little bit more difficult doing it on a screen. And now let's see if our answer kind of makes sense. We came up with 4.5, 3. Let's see where that is. 4.5, that means it's between 4 and 5. So approximately here, 4.5, 3. So up to 3. So right around here. Now the question is, does that look like it's halfway between A and F? Does it look like it's right there in the middle? I would say yeah, it looks pretty good. From A to M, it looks like it's congruent from M to F. So I'm happy with that. I like my answer. 4.5, 3. All right, let's move on. Number 14. Is negative 2, 1 the midpoint of negative 5, 4 and 1, negative 1? Okay, so they're asking, is this one the midpoint if these are my two endpoints? Well, I'm just going to ignore the negative 2, 1 for a second. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to figure out what is the midpoint of negative 5, 4 and 1, negative 1. And once I have that, I'll see, is it negative 2, 1 or not? So same thing like we did with the last problem. We're going to add the x's. So here we go. Let's add the x's. We have negative 5 and 1. So we're going to do negative 5 plus 1 over 2. Add the x's, divide by 2. Same thing with the y's. 4 and negative 1. So 4 plus negative 1 over 2. Okay, let's simplify. Negative 5 plus 1 is negative 4 over 2. 4 plus negative 1. The plus and minus makes a minus. So it's 4 minus 1, which is 3, over 2. Last step, negative 4 divided by 2, negative 2. 3 over 2, that's approximately 1.5. So, let's go back to the question. Is the midpoint negative 2, 1? The answer is no. It's pretty close, okay? Except according to what we figured out, it should be 1.5 for the y value, not 1. So I'm going to say no. The other thing that I want to show you, besides just saying no, it's not the midpoint, is I want to show you some other tests that we do when we want to find the other endpoint in a question. Sometimes they give us one endpoint, one midpoint, and they ask us what's the other endpoint. And we've been taught how to do a stacking method for that. But I just want to show you something else that has to do with that stacking method. If I stack up my two endpoints, so if I have negative 5, 4, and I have 1, negative 1, and then I'm told that my midpoint may be negative 2, 1. I want to check if that's correct. Well, if it's a midpoint, that means what happens in between the first point and the midpoint should be the same thing as what happens between the midpoint and the second endpoint. So let's see what that means. To go from negative 5 down to negative 2, okay? On the number line, from negative 5 to negative 2, that's a difference of positive 3. You're increasing by 3 to get from negative 5 to negative 2. To get from negative 2 to 1, again, you're increasing. So I'm going to do plus 3. Again, negative 2 plus 3 gets me to 1. This is the same thing on both sides. That makes sense. For a midpoint, it should be the same thing above and below. Let's take a look at the y values. So for the y values, to get from 4 to 1, while I'm subtracting, I'm getting smaller. From 4 to 1, I'm subtracting 3. Let's take a look at how do I get from 1 to negative 1. To get from 1 to negative 1, I'm subtracting again, but I'm only subtracting 2. 1 minus 2 gets me to negative 1. These are not the same, and a midpoint should have it equidistant on both sides. So that's another way that you can check to make sure whether or not something's a midpoint. If it's not the same on both sides, it doesn't work. Okay, let's move on. 15. The diameter of a circle has endpoints of 8, 7 and negative 2, 3. What are the coordinates of the center of the circle? Okay, so let's go back. The diameter of a circle has endpoints. Well, let's go ahead and draw a circle so we can visualize what's happening. So here we go. Magic. Fixed it. Magic. Okay, so here's our circle, and we need to draw the diameter. The diameter is a line segment that cuts from one end of the circle to the end of the circle, and it passes through the center. So that's our center point. So here's our visual, a diameter inside of a circle. That diameter has endpoints of 8, 7, and negative 2, 3. Now I want you to get used to the fact that when we do our sketches, they're not going to be accurate. They're just for us to lay out the information that we're provided in a problem, so we can visualize what needs to happen. So here are two endpoints. What are the coordinates of the center of the circle? Okay, this is our ask. What is the center of the circle? Well, the center is right here. It's the middle of the diameter. It's the midpoint of the diameter. So what we're really asked in this question is to find the midpoint of this line segment that's your diameter. We've already done it twice before. Let's go ahead and do it again. So to find midpoint, we're going to add the x's, divide by 2, add the y's, divide by 2. So 8 and negative 2. 8 plus negative 2 divided by 2. Same thing with the y's. 7 and 3. 7 plus 3 divided by 2. Okay, so 8 plus negative 2. The plus and minus makes a minus. 8 minus 2, 6, all over 2. 7 plus 3 is 10, over 2. Simplify last step. Now 6 over 2 is 3. 10 over 2 is 5. So our midpoint is 3, 5. Now you may not call it the midpoint. Maybe when you state an answer, you're going to say the coordinates of the center are 3, 5. Okay, let's go on to our last two problems. Number 16. Now before I even start reading, I'm going to look at this visual. I'm going to get familiar with it. Okay, so I have a line segment called AC. I have a point B that's in between A and C. They give me the length of the entire line segment, which is 3x minus 31. And then they give me the length of just the left piece from A to B. This looks like a segment addition postulate question. In my mind, I'm thinking the left piece from A to B plus the right piece from B to C should give me the whole thing. Let's see what the question is asking. If B is the midpoint of AC, solve for x. Okay, so if B is the midpoint, if something's the midpoint, that means it's cutting the line segment into two equal parts. So from A to B is going to be the same as from B to C. They're going to be congruent. So these tick marks show that it's identical in length. So my question is solve for x. Now what I want to do is I want to say that the left plus the right equals the whole thing. If I get a little bit more technical with it, it's AB, which is the left piece, plus BC, which is the right piece, should give me the whole thing, which is AC. Now, the issue is I don't really have a value right here for BC. They don't tell me anything. But since they told us that B is the midpoint, that means whatever I have from A to B, it should be the same thing as from B to C. So because I have x plus 6 on the left, I'm going to have x plus 6 for the right. Because if it's a midpoint here, that means it's equal on both sides. Okay, so I think now I'm ready to go ahead and set up an equation to solve. AB is x plus 6 plus BC, which we now figured out is also x plus 6, equals the whole thing, 3x minus 31. Now this is a simple equation here. I just need to go ahead and solve. So let's go ahead and solve. Let's start by combining like terms. So I have x and x on the left, which is 2x. 6 and 6, which is 12, equals 3x minus 31. Now my next step is to get all the x's to one side where there's already a larger x value. So I want to move the 2x to the right. To do that, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. And now I'm going to have 12 equals 3x minus 2x, which gives us 1x, or just x, minus 31. Lastly, I want to get rid of that negative 31. So I'm going to add 31 to both sides. Remember our inverse operations. Those cancel. 12 plus 31 gives us 43. That was a quick mistake there. 43 equals x. So our answer for x is 43. This was a segment addition postulate question that also used your understanding of what midpoints do to your line segment, which is split it in half so that both sides are equal. All right, so let's slide on over to number 17. Okay, again, I'm looking at number 17, and the diagram doesn't have much in there, but I do have a point B, clearly not in the middle, and it's splitting my line segment into a left piece and a right piece that make up the whole thing. All right, let's go through the question. If AB is 4x plus 9, and BC is equal to 5x plus 2, and AC is 56, solve for x, AB, and BC. Okay, let's go through. Start from the beginning. If AB is 4x plus 9, that's our first value. Let's throw it in the diagram. BC equals 5x plus 2. And AC equals 56. Okay, well, what's AC? Oh, that's the whole thing from A all the way to C. That is 56. The question asks you to solve for x, also solve for AB and BC. Now, the only way that I can get AB and BC is if I know what x is. So my first step is, let's go ahead and set up an equation that lets me get x, and then at the end I can plug in and get AB and then BC. So let's start with getting x. Remember what we talked about in the last problem. If I have a line segment that's split into pieces, when I add the pieces together, it should give me the whole thing. So if I have AB as the left piece plus the right piece BC, that will equal the whole thing that makes up the whole line segment, which is AC. Let's plug in some values. AB is 4x plus 9, plus BC, which is 5x plus 2, and that gives us the whole thing, 56. Okay, that's an equation that we can solve. Let's go ahead and do it. Combine like terms, start with the x's. 4x plus 5x is 9x. Then the whole numbers, 9 plus 2 is 11, equals 56. Okay, next step, I'm going to isolate the x values. So I'm going to subtract 11 from both sides to get the 9x by itself. So now I have 9x equals 56 minus 11, which is 45. Divide both sides by 9 to get x by itself. So x equals 45 divided by 9, which is 5. There is your first answer. X equals 5. But we are not done. We also have to get AB and BC. Now that we know that x is 5, it should be quick. So we're going to plug in our x is 5 right here and right here to get our two lengths. So 4 times 5 plus 9, and 5 times 5 plus 2. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 9 is 29. That is the length of AB. BC, 5 times 5 is 25, plus 2 is 27. That's length of BC. Now here's a check. Does 29 plus 27, which is the left and the right side, does that equal 56, which is the whole thing? That's my question. That'll make me know if I did my algebra correctly. 29 plus 27 equals 56. Yep. Makes sense. So I did my algebra correctly. So to state my answers, x equals 5, AB equals 29, and then BC equals 27. Okay, that completes your entire review sheet. If you can do this on your own one more time without watching these videos in a testing environment, no cell phone, no TV, no distractions, no music, if you can do it all again and be able to come up with the correct answer each time, then you are ready for the test. But if you cannot do these questions by yourselves in a testing environment, you're not ready yet. So continue going over the videos, continue rewriting your formulas, and check with your teacher if you're having any other questions. All right, good luck on the Unit 1 test. I'll see you for Unit 2.